And on this week's episode, we are going to Mars. No, not that one, you bunch of perverts. But since you already brought that up. Hello fellow haters of the blue, and welcome to my channel, and also welcome to another episode of Heavy Contrast. Heavy Contrast is a series where I try to paint one miniature to the highest standard possible using just contrast paints and highlights. And for this episode I'm going to paint an Adeptus Mechanicus Skitarii warrior. So, let's get cracking. Before we start painting, let me talk to you about sub-assemblies and different prime colors. So this is my sub-assembly. I have the legs on one side. I have his body fully built with arms and everything. For this pose you may need to separate the arms if the rifle is across his chest or something like that. Then I have his little backpack again. I prime the legs and the backpack with lead pelture and the body with brave bone. And to begin with, I'm going to start with the inside part of his coat and have this separated from my pin vise, which I use to hold my models down, so I can hold it in this position because I want it to dry upside down, so more wash deposits down here rather than down here, which I wanted lighter. So I'm going to do a layer of a 1-to-1 mix of skeleton horde and contrast medium. I'm going to be careful not to apply this outside this area. Now once it's dry, I'm going to absorb the excess here on the top now, but it's obviously the bottom of the cloak. I'm going to go with a clean brush and I'm going to wipe all the excess, just like that. And you have a super smooth result. So we are continuing with this kind of weird step the mini is now, with it being upside down, because I want to finish the inside, and for this I'm going to go to palette wood flesh and I'm going to do a highlight. You can skip this step, this is going to be barely visible, but you know me. I'm going to thin down to sort of a heavy glaze consistency, and you can see there how thin down it is. And I'm just going to do a highlight of this towards the bottom side and picking up this raised folds, so to speak. So just like that. Don't worry too much, this is again going to be barely visible. With that highlight on, I'm going to do the last highlight in this weird step, and this will be pure white. I'm just going to do a very thin edge highlight on the borders of this cloak. Little paint on your brush. Just glide it across the edge like this. So with the inside of his coat out of the way, I'm going to paint the outside, and for this I'm going to use a 1-to-1 mix of Blood Angels Red and Flesturous Red. I really like this mix. I think it gives a very nice base coat for red that is not dark or not too light. So, as you see, I have my brush fully loaded and I'm going to do a thick layer. I'm not going to worry about anything else that is not the coat. The rest can be fixed later, but the coat, this is your chance of making it right. So I'm going to do a thick layer of this on one section, in this case the most difficult one, so you can see it. And once I apply it, you will see that it's flowing by itself towards gravity, which is good. And now it's time to take out any excess. So I have my clean brush here and I take away paint from, well, where I don't want it to be, or where it's pulling in a way that I don't like. And once they start drying, like here for example, you don't touch it. Because if you do, you're going to ruin it. Our red contrast layer is now dry, and I'm going to smooth out all the little pullings and imperfections a bit more, and also provide a better foundation for the highlights using Evason Scarlet. I have my Evason Scarlet thinned down into kind of a heavy glaze consistency, you can see it here. And I'm going to apply this on the top of the coat towards the upper side, always moving my brush into the direction I want the highlights to be. There is pretty nasty pooling there, so I'm going to deposit more paint in that side. But for the most part, I'm very happy with the result. With everything now smoothed out, I'm going to start with the second highlight. This will be Wild Rider Red. You can even glaze a bit of this to create a bit of more of a volumetric highlight. As before, you have to move your brush in the direction you want the highlights to be. With that highlight of Wild Rider Red now done, I'm going to move into Fire Dragon Bright, and I'm just going to do a very thin edge highlight of this all around the red details. With that highlight done, I'm going to move into the last one. This will be Lugenath Orange, and I will just do very small dots of Lugenath Orange in the most prominent points. For example, there, here, the corners. With the red out of the way, I'm going to paint all the metallic details and all the black details so I can glue both parts together. And I'm going to start with the black details, and for this I'm going to base coat them using Mechanicus Standard Grey. I will pick up anything that is cloth, and also any of these smooth cables. With the Mechanicus Standard Grey now done, I'm going to apply a layer of Black Templar over all those details. I want to be as careful as possible around the metallic details, but if you mess them up, just go back to lead belcher and knead them up. It's very easy. I just prefer to save me that inconvenience. In the meantime, you can also base coat all the metallic details that are not primed with lead belcher with lead belcher. With all the metallic details now base coated with lead belcher, I'm going to apply a wash all over them, and for this I'm going to use a 1:4 mix of Black Templar and Contrast Medium. This is 1 part Black Templar, and 4 parts contrast medium. Our wash of black template is now dry, and I'm going to pick up random details using Balthasar Gold. This will be copper details, and you don't have to do the same on every model. You can just basically pick something and paint it copper. I just kind of like to do symmetrical things here. So if I do one side, I will do on the other exactly the same. Now that the Balthasar Gold layer is dry, I'm going to apply a wash using wildwood and contrast medium. This is 1 part wildwood and 4 parts contrast medium. Also, while I have this wash at hand, I'm going to add it to certain parts of the steel, very subtly. Some of the recesses, you know, a bit of wear and tear, a bit of grease you can add and then feather out, that kind of thing. With that wash applied, I'm going to give these hanging cables a bit more detail by painting some yellow stripes, and for this the first step is to paint those stripes using Corax White. And with that done, I'm going to take Direct Yellow and I'm going to apply a layer over just those white stripes. If you just have Ijanthan Yellow, you can use Ijanthan Yellow. I prefer Direct Yellow because it gives a darker, more muted yellow, which to me it's better for this kind of application. And yes, I painted the other side of the cables, even though they are not going to be seen because I'm that kind of person. So with that steps done all over the model, he is now back into one piece and I can start highlight, and I'm going to start with a black, and for this I'm going to do an edge highlight using Thunderhawk Blue. For these cables I'm just going to do an edge highlight on the top. This is just for the black cables, nothing to do with the stripy ones. I also painted black the Mechanicus symbol on his chest, which I'm also going to highlight with this. I will do the white bits later on. And for the clothes, I'm also going to do an edge highlight. And for the second highlight on the black details, I'm going to use Fenrisian Grey. And I'm just going to do the same edge highlight on the cables, but concentrating that highlight towards the points that I want more light. Don't forget to highlight the Mechanicus symbol. And of course the clothes. Now I'm going to do a final highlight on the black details, but not on all of them. I'm going to take Ulthu and Grey, and I'm just going to highlight the cables. And I'm just going to do a very small dot of this in the highest highlight point. And now also with Ulthu and Grey, I'm going to paint the halves of the symbol that correspond. In this case, this part of the skull, and the other half of the cog. And now I'm going to do a final highlight on that symbol using pure white. You may think that I finished with Ulthuan Grey now, but no, I haven't. I'm going to do one more highlight with this. This will be on the stripy cables. And I have my Ulthuan Grey thinned down to this sort of consistency. You can see it's quite transparent. And I'm going to do a very thin line all across the cable. That's the first pass. This will be very subtle, but I'm going to do more passes with this. There you go. With all the black and all the cables now done, I'm going to move into all the metallic details. I'm going to start with the steel ones, and for this I'm going to highlight them first using lead belcher. I have my lead belcher thinned down, something like this. You can see it's a bit transparent, and that's because I'm going to brush this over most of the areas, creating a volumetric highlight and reestablishing a bit of the shine that is lost. For the copper details, I'm going to layer them and highlight them using Hashut copper. Now I'm going to finish highlighting both metals using Stormhost silver. With that done, off camera, I cleaned up all the areas that I have messed up on the remaining parts yet to paint using Corax White. You can use Wraithbone if you want, the result is going to be very similar, but I just prefer to use Corax because it covers so well, and in one application I have everything cleaned up. You can see all the purity seals, what will be wood on his weapon, all the lenses and lights, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to base coat them all using contrast paints. And for this I'm going to start with the purity seals, and I'm going to use Volupus Pink to paint the wax. And now I'm going to paint a tiny little detail. On these dials, they have an arrow in them, and I'm going to coat that arrow using Flesh Tears Red. And I'm going to paint the parchment paper on the purity seals using a 4:1 mix of contrast medium and wildwood. This is 1 part wildwood and 4 parts contrast medium. I will apply it to one of the purity seals and then absorb the excess. Now for the wooden details I'm going to use a 2:1 mix of wildwood and Gergrant Affair. And once that first layer dries, I'm going to go back with the same mix and I'm going to paint some wood grain. It doesn't have to be perfect, I just want to start establishing the wood grain now. And then I will refine it with the highlight colors. And now it's just time to paint all the lenses. And for this I'm going to use Achillean green. What I will do with Achillean green is apply it kind of in an upward motion, starting from the bottom and finishing on the top, right there. And with all those base coats done, it's now time to move into the highlights. I'm going to start with the lenses, that's because it's the most fun part. And I'm going to take Ruthuan Grey. I have my Ruthuan Grey thinned down, sort of like this. You can see it's a bit transparent. And I'm going to do a small highlight right opposite to the darker side, which is where we finish our application of Achillean green. Just like that. And now to finish off the lenses, I'm going to take pure white and I'm going to do a dot of this right on the darker side of each lens. And on the bigger ones, and these are more rounded ones, I can do another dot of this on the brighter side. For the lenses done, I'm going to move into the purity seals. And for this, I'm just going to take palette wood flesh and do an edge highlight. And I'm also going to take palette wood flesh, which now I have thinned down to this sort of consistency. You can see it's quite thin actually. And I'm going to do some dots of this into the purity seals. And I'm going to take pure white and do a final highlight on the parchment. And to finish off the purity seals, I'm going to take wildwood and I'm just going to do some squiggly lines. And now I'm going to paint the wood on his rifle. And for this I'm going to highlight it using a 1-to-1 mix of Talon Sun and palette wood flesh. I'm going to edge highlight the wood with this and reinforce some of the wood grain that I added in the previous step. So with that highlight done, I kind of feel like I went a bit too far with it. So I'm going to tone it down. And this is very easy, just mixing the same mix that I used to base coat it. This is 2 parts wildwood and 1 part Gurgrant fir. And I'm thinning it down to a glaze consistency. You can see the consistency here. And I'm just going to basically apply this as a filter. And I'm not going to touch the edge highlights. I'm just going to apply this to the inside parts of the wood grain that I painted. Again, not touching the edge highlights, those are fine. I just want to tone down the main wood grain sections. And with that last step done, and the base now painted, our Skitarii is finished. And if you want to see how we did this base, you can see a video of the exact same process appearing now in the top right corner. Note that I also added a bit of the pigments used for the basing on the bottom of the robe and on his feet to add a bit more atmosphere and to integrate him more into the terrain that he's on. So guys, as always, I really hope you enjoyed this video and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye! Do you like my videos and want to help me make them? Well, there are several ways you can do that. You can follow me on social media. I have the links to all my social media in the description below. You can also check all my affiliate links in the pinned comment of this video. Use those links in your next hobby purchase and help me without any additional cost to you. I finally have a link for the brushes that I use down there. Don't forget to check the merch that you can see just below this video in the shop tab of my channel. But most importantly, there is Patreon and channel members. You have the link to my Patreon in the description below in the pinned comment of the video. Or if you prefer, you can just click the join button below this video. Patreon and channel members help me do all the cool projects that I want to make and help me improve the quality of my videos. Don't be afraid, no content will ever be hidden behind a paywall, but it's a nice way to help me and you will get something back for generosity. That's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. A special thank you to Heather Amster, Lawrence Gismundi, Nicolas Furnell, Brian Bledsoe, Terranosaur, Christoph Moret, Javi Mota, Kim Anderson, Michael Boye, EAVY Miniatures, Thomas Ustergaard, Beldrain, Victor Domen, Aaron Del, Carlos Rivera, Charles Amintas, Chris Fivey, Kieran Moorthile, Darcy Farrar, Dr. V, Gareth Smith, G4, Jamie Milligan, Josh Simpson, JT Butler, Kevin Mian, Kevin Sulas, Ronald Lineman, Mark Jarvis, Notius Maximus, One Brastock, Better, Oscar, Jonathan, Tomberg, Samuel, Sasha Park, and Dusted for being the coolest persons in the planet. Be like these fine folks on my Patreon and take control.